Hello, my name is Smug, and this is the first of a new project series I'm working on. I've been working on for a few weeks. This is Tales from the Riverside, Part 1. Sit down for a while and I'll tell you a few urban legends and paranormal experiences I encountered living in the Ohio River Valley in this mini-series. Names have been changed to protect the innocent, but the location names remain to provide authenticity of these incredible tales. Ever since I can remember, the Ohio River Valley was always crawling with strange and fantastic tales of cryptids, strange occurrences, and things you just didn't talk about publicly. But I figured a few personal tales I knew and was informed about by my family would enlighten you viewers to how unique the area is to live in. I always grew up seeing strange UFOs hanging around my neighborhood backyard, but little did I know how prominent UFOs were here. My dad told me this story a while back when I was very small. Back when your mom was expecting you, we took a camping trip over at Raccoon Ridge near Brown City State Park. Late one night at the campsite, this loud object flew over us like the loudest freight train ever recorded into the wooded valley below the steep rock cliffs of the campsite, startling us all awake. Myself and another guy picked up some weapons and wanted to go down into the valley to investigate. He hesitated and then continued. What was strangest most of all was that all the loud bugs and wildlife you would normally hear in a park were not there. It was complete dead silence. When we asked the park rangers what was going on, not even they knew, but they tried to not incite panic to the campers to establish order. The park rangers warned us not to leave, and force would be used to establish that said order if necessary. He looked at me directly with the seriousness in his eyes. But the strangest thing most of all that night was the state of mind your mother was in. In a strange, almost dreamlike trance she was in, totally unresponsive to human touch or any other senses, but with normal signs of life within her. Dad told me in the morning, when the event ended, she just snapped out of it. She recollected nothing about that night. Ever since then, my dad and I would consistently see UFOs in the years to come, many of which were several pairs speaking in weird color patterns, almost like a Morse code, and then blur right out of the sky like a streak of white lightning. The wildest encounter, as of today I've seen of UFOs on my own, was during a night trip through my grandparents' woods. The UFO in question seemed to idly follow me and watch me, but when I noticed it, it took off like a streak in the sky. Another tale I recall in youth was the North Bend area by Cliff Road, where my grandparents used to live close by before they passed. You see, the North Bend area always had this haunting presence around it, ever since I could remember as a small child. Maybe it was the haunting ancient graveyard at Congress Green Cemetery, across from former President William Harrison's tomb. Driving up to my grandparents' house at night with my dad, you would see this eerie, almost sapient humanoid fog creep along the cemetery. It would creep roadside like it was some sort of enigmatic troop of fellows waiting for a lift and looking back at you. I would wager that these forms would even look at me through the car window with empty black eyes. It was a sight I wouldn't want any child to see. Perhaps it was the even odder ancient Mound Dweller burial grounds that gave the River Valley area its perturbing presence. For you see, the local Native Americans always told us modern American folk that the Mound Dwellers lived in these valleys way before they ever migrated to this place. They were called the Mound Dwellers. They were called the Mound Dwellers because during a 5,000-year period, they constructed various styles of earthen mounds for religious, ceremonial, burial, and elite residential purposes. More importantly, you could see where their dead were buried because their burial mounds were so raised at the hills overlooking the cliff road area. It was unmistakable what they were, and you wouldn't disturb them. A few years back, I recall, someone made that grave mistake. A certain gravel company made the dire error of mining one of these mounds when I was around 9 or 10 years old. No surprise to the locals that the dig site was plagued with what the crew described as strange happenings and never going back there kinds of scenarios that forced the crew to abandon the site years later. In relation to my story, during my grandmother's latter years of life, when I would drive up there to see her, I swear I would see disembodied limbs and torsos, and sometimes floating heads, crossing Cliff Road as I drove through them with my car, paying no mind to me. I swear I would see a couple disembodied entities acknowledging my presence and waving at me sometimes. Tell me what you think. Did the modern day interference with road construction and mining upset the resting spirits of the Mound Dwellers? Leave a comment below. UFOs, haunted cemeteries, and Native American burial grounds aren't the only things weird in the Ohio River Valley area. You would not believe that the area has its very own Sasquatch legend, or that I had encountered it many times in my life living there. The Grassman, aka the Ohio Grassman, is the name of the localized Sasquatch that stalks Ohio's woods. Various stories are rumored about it, but the consistent facts about this cryptid, it is more aggressive and territorial than the average Sasquatch, and I had the misfortune of encountering it. This is how I encountered Grassman. I was in my early 20s living with my dad, occasionally helping my sickly grandmother up the road from us, when a calm summer's night turned dangerous. The house was a rental by the backwoods close to a local park with what seemed like miles of territory untouched by man. Well, one night, Dad and I were enjoying some late night television when we heard this unnaturally loud squealing noise, not even a few meters from the property. Our neighbor's dogs went into a frenzy as we heard this behemoth thing crash and break standing tree limbs with no effort at all just outside our front porch. Dad and I always scoffed at the idea of Grassman before, but we couldn't believe our ears. What could it be? It was no hog. It was no bear. This thing sounded like a humanoid. We stayed inside while Dad peered through the door's peephole in vain at the blackness of the night. As the neighbor's dogs barked and snarled at this thing in the darkness, the dread building as we waited. Was this thing going to kill us? What did it want from us? We had no idea. However, the only thing keeping it at bay from us was the dogs outside. The dogs must have driven it off because we heard it slink back into the woods and out of sight and sound. That was one of the worst experiences I encountered in my life. The next morning, the woods and surrounding area played out like nothing terrible ever happened. And I think that's what makes me more uncomfortable about the whole thing. It was one of the reasons why I decided to move out. Yet I'm drawn back to it yearly like an old friend. That was a few local tales about the Ohio River Valley. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and write a comment saying you'd like more spooky content like this in the future. Until next time, readers, don't look behind you.